rest of the world, engaging all Dominicans at home and abroad on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world-class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more. Globally positioning Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on the Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95, the big station.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Good evening to you at home or in your vehicles, listening on the radio or on the internet in Dominica or abroad. Thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A very, very warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, 5th August, 2025, the 29th Tuesday of 2025, and it's just about 8:05 p.m. in the studios at Q95, the big station. Sorry, we're 5 minutes late tonight. We're live on our radio frequencies on QTV, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live, like our pages, or on your phone numbers or on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95 because you know it's true if you hear it on Q. We continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, love, peace, prosperity, and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. It is our 29th Global View on Q show for 2025, and we continue to engage with you, our local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. My co-host, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, our guest tonight, a senator and engineer Delbert Paris, well-known businessman and pharmacist Andy Jolly. Tonight we reveal how the 2025-2026 national budget promotes island for sale and land for refugees and foreigners. If no plans or ideas for the way forward for national development, for growth and generational wealth creation for Dominicans, like Dr. Dale Dangleben and Breeze's Mat and Josephine Gabriel and Company and Suki's and Gary Hotel, etc., etc. The list goes on. We heard Foreign Affairs Minister Vince Henderson's contribution in the Parliament during the national budget presentation, where he vilified Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited. We will talk about that tonight. In sharp contrast, we also heard Senator Delbert Paris's contribution in Parliament as regards budget reconciliation. He was impressive. And Dr. Thompson Fontaine's 10 points as a strategy for the way forward for Dominica's development is indeed refreshing and inspiring. But here's a little housekeeping before we go further. On this morning's Hot Seat show, Richie may have misspoken or quoted someone as saying that wherever Palestinians settle, there is violence, or words to that effect. That is not correct. So I take this opportunity to correct that misstatement. I thought that I would put this on the record. So now here are some talking points for tonight. Where are the authorities trying to destroy Josephine Gabriel and Company? Why are they trying to destroy Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited? Why does government seek to be paid to host Palestinian refugees when they are unable to collect garbage in the country? They are unable to keep our teachers and healthcare professionals in Dominica. Do they subscribe to a two-state solution in that conflict? Is the 2025-2026 national budget promoting local development, or is it a battering ram for local businesses? Why is the budget allocation to the Prime Minister's office so large as compared to that of other ministries that manage the major growth sectors of the economy, when in fact all of the programs that fall under the Prime Minister's ministry are supposed to be funded by proceeds from the CBI program? Why the cut in duties on imports of non-nutritional canned items for just 6 months? And where are the incentives for agro businesses to invest and grow in Dominica? Are incendiary devices being used to destroy rather than develop local businesses? Who speaks for Dominican businesses anyway? Is the budget being used as a Trojan horse for foreign interests? Do we have national development in Dominica, or do we simply have accumulation of national debt? So did this current budget and past national budgets create the policy environment that enable Dominicans to independently earn a decent living and quality of life? Or did they simply encourage out migration to greener pastures in the region and in North America? Is the government's existing overriding concept of development for Dominica a recipe for more closures of local businesses, or more unemployment, or more out migration of Dominicans for Dominica, or inward migration of foreigners, or more misery for locals? Is that what is seen as development in Dominica these days? We will make suggestions on the way forward for Dominica. But meantime, here are some other issues that we might need to address. Maybe our panelists might address some of those tonight if we have the time. We must stop the rampant in your face awards of no bid contracts and force government to operate within procurement laws. We must stop the practice of insider trading. We must reduce the rampant unemployment nationwide. We must stem the high tide of closures of local businesses. We must attract local and foreign private sector direct investments. We must stop the skyrocketing cost of living by lowering taxes. We must ensure that charges for water and electricity are affordable. We must stop the escalating crime and gun violence in Dominica. We must ensure that garbage is collected and properly disposed. We must bring new ideas to the table that are not in the budget. We must talk about budget reconciliation. Yes, we must talk about budget reconciliation. Reconciliation, not just the budget. We must talk about why the funds in Mr. Skerritt's allocations in the budget are fully utilized and even often overspent, while the allocations of other ministries are underutilized and underspent, thus disappear to be due to deliberate sabotage. So, thinking forward towards 2028 or to Dominica's 50th anniversary of independence, what are the people's expectations for their well being? Are they satisfied with their current conditions? So we look forward to the suggestions of our panel, our listeners, our callers and viewers on Facebook and YouTube on what needs to be done to move beyond this economic stagnation and oppression. My co-host, Dr. Justice Dr. Vingandri, our distinguished guests, Senator Delbert Paris and businessman Anderson Jolly, will all share their ideas and suggestions on how the 2025-2026 national budget promotes island for sale, land for refugees and foreigners, with no plans or ideas for the way forward for national development, growth, and generational wealth creation for Dominicans. The panelists will hopefully comment on my talking points and on their own talking points and more, with a view to moving forward on a path to real independence, real growth, return of a strong middle class, and production and accumulation of generational wealth again in Dominica. So, as usual, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to help us give a huge shout out, hugs, love, appreciation, and a big thank you to our farmers, our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and public and private sector patriots and friend of Dominica at home and abroad. And as I always say, we welcome each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air. Big up Lambi on the console, directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q and on the Global View on Q. So call us anytime during the program. Lambi will signal us when you call. My co-host and panelists will expand and deliver on the idea. So I go now to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for his opening remarks to get the ball rolling. Dr. Andre.
Thank you, Mr. G. Let me welcome our esteemed panelists and welcome Lambi and welcome the listeners. And let me start by saying this is the day the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice. We are focused on the budget yet again because it's a It's a sore point in the eyes of many, and what is conspicuous about it, its failure. Its failure to institute or to contain measures or initiatives that would benefit Dominicans as a whole, not Dominicans based on their political affiliation. And it seems to me that nothing is more apparent than what you've referred to, Mr. G, the attack, the scurrilous attack by a minister of trade.
Just 1 second, Dr. Andre. I believe, Andy, you may be logged in 2 different places. And so one of them,
I'm in.
yes, one of them is the mic is open, so some noise is coming through. So you might want to check that. Okay, sorry.
Yes, as I was saying, by the attack, the verbal attack by a minister of government on Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited, a Dominican company, mind you, that has been in business since 1959. That is a household name in Dominica. That it is the very epitome of a model corporate citizen. Now, before I go into why I think this is so awful, we have to put it within a certain context, because this didn't happen overnight. This is the end result of a playbook that has been in effect for years, for decades. Just think of the number of businesses, indigenous businesses, that have been stalked and that have been virtually or almost destroyed by punitive, vindictive, toxic political partisanship by the administration. Think of Odi Brisbane and Sons. Think of a toilet paper factory by Severin Mackenzie. Think about the attack on Suki a few years ago in terms of who will and who will not patronize his businesses. Think of the attack on Nature Island Water, owned by the late Frank Barron. A government person said that they will not purchase his water in any of their official functions. Think of what they did to the Public Works Department. They started their attack on the Public Works Department just as they've started their attack on Josephine Gabriel and Company. They started saying that it wasn't efficient. It wasn't producing good work for the Dominican people. But they commenced that attack as a prelude to casting them aside and giving their cronies the work that the Public Service Department used to do. So they subcontract the work at huge contracts to entities, including foreign owners, who then subcontracted it to other persons to build with inflated costs and with a monster called kickbacks. So there's method to this madness, this attack on Josephine Gabriel. This company, as I said, has a significant footprint in Dominica. It is fair to say that very few companies can match the type of socially responsible initiatives taken by the company, whether in the field of sports, whether in the field of music, steel pan, for example, whether in terms of assisting certain schools, for example, whether in assisting cultural events. They've been at the forefront. But not only that, look at the contribution that Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited has made to Dominica over the years. My understanding is that they employ over 65 or under about 65 Dominicans. They serve an important function. They have taken the initiative to bottle Dominican water and design their own brand, Trapito Water. What about their contributions to Dominican's economy? Whereas the government has given tax exemptions to foreign companies to the tune of over $20 million, I can indicate to you, based on figures that I've found out in the public space, that between 2023, January to December, they paid over what? What do I have here? Over $300,000 in excise taxes. January to December 2024, over $900,000 in excise taxes. January 25 to July 2025, $1.1 million They have contributed to the public purse. They have received some exemption, but certainly not to the extent that other foreign companies have received. They pay social, how do you call it? Social security for their workers, unlike many foreign workers in Dominica. They've received a 5-year tax exemption for the importation, for example, of raw materials, just for 5 years. On spare parts, 4 years. On commercial vehicles, 2 years. On a generator, for God's sakes, 2 years. They have weathered the storms of adversity in Dominica. And this Minister of Trade, his signal, his stellar contribution was to, or is to, the generation of geothermal energy.
That's the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
I think you got it right. You know better than I. I can tell you, somebody told me, and I couldn't dispute what they were saying. The Label Electric Company in Dominica has produced more electricity than that geothermal company. They've spent over $100 million over a decade. The light they've produced cannot, well, suffice it to say, as I said, it has been totally dysfunctional, has not generated anything, and it is like a perpetual sore on the Dominican body politic. But they continue because we know what it is. It is a means to launder money and to fatten certain persons' pockets. But they want to take a serious attack, or launch, I should say, under the cover of parliamentary immunity. So the minister cannot be sued. And he could use that platform to cowardly launch an attack against a company that is still in business after more than 70 years, employing over 60 persons, contributing to the economy, paying taxes, making charitable donations, giving people a hope that they can pay for their children to go to school, they can support themselves, rather than running to the clinic every Wednesday, if it still exists. And how then can you talk about national development and link that phrase to this budget? You can't do it because it's not aimed. And there is, as I said, there is method to that madness. The timing is appropriate, because within that same budget, some minister publicly indicated, beating their chests like Tarzan, that they will be seeking foreign investors, or they have sought foreign investors, to invest in some water exporting facility. So you wreck the local water industry and you prop up some foreign entity that is going to be engaged in the export, whether bulk or bottled, I don't know. And we know, based on what has happened, because past is prologue, that these foreign companies, they ship out their profits, Gasso. The profits are not kept here to multiply and to support local businesses. It's exported. And they are given tax exemptions when they export what they earn in Dominica. They don't pay Social Security, and the Social Security authorities will have 1,000 reasons why there is nothing wrong with that. But if you earn money in Dominica, you should pay Social Security. So this is what's happening. It's a matter of impoverishing local industry, starving them, while propping up foreign ones. And speaking of starving, it's a beautiful word to segue into the Palestinian problem. You have paros on the streets of Roseau. You have persons, hundreds of whom are unemployed. Mais ces Palestiniens ouvrent venir ici, Gaza. Why? Oh, he loves the Palestinians. They're such nice people. And the chances are they are. But they are victims in a war, quite frankly. They are the pawns in a war. where they are victimized and they're being starved out of existence. We know what the Americans have proclaimed that they want to do. We know what Netanyahu has proclaimed that he wants to do: drive them away from the ancestral home. So here comes a knight in shining armor, the Prime Minister of Dominica, basically telling the Israelis and the Palestinians, Gasso, I want to help you all put a stake in the heart of the Palestinians. I want to help you drive them away from their ancestral homes. But there's a price. There's a twofold price. We will only do so if you give us l'argent cherche. Note the motivation. Not any humanitarian zeal, not any altruistic zeal, but money, money, money. That's why your theme for this evening, Mr. G, is so appropriate. Money, money, money. But there's another motivation, as a good friend of mine pointed out this afternoon in a WhatsApp message. Dominica, as we know, is on a list, apparently one of the top islands or countries on that list, of rogue nations that have engaged flagrantly in money laundering, flagrantly in violating UN sanctions, flagrantly violated US sanctions. Certain persons allegedly have engaged in human trafficking. So it is on a pariah list. And there are prosecutors, whether in North America or Europe, who are sharpening their pencils. Well, they've used pens these days and laptops, sorry, sharpening something, waiting for the day when those involved in these internationally illegal activities will be brought to trial. And every effort is being made to insulate those who are implicated in that type of activity in Dominica. So what better way to tell the US, Gasso, I'm with you, I love you, I want to help. Obviously, you have to give us some money. So this offer, this cynical offer, is just an extension of the historical victimization of the Palestinians. And you've seen images. You've seen images of what's going on. You don't need me to tell you. Whether you support Israel, that's your business. But the truth shall set you free. Some persons have said, oh, the images are doctored. Well, the only thing that needs doctrine is your mind. You have to free it. The evidence is there. It's stark. It speaks for itself. So yet again, we are taking the wrong side of history for pure self-cynical interest. And I'll tell you, there's a song. What is the song? You can run, but you can't hide. There has to be a day of reckoning, because you cannot flaunt international law and think you can mama guy persons in the international community just as you mama guy some of your supporters right here in Dominica. Dominica deserves better. It is often said that the engine of economic growth rests within the private sector. No amount of kickbacks will liberate Dominica. No amount of victimization will liberate Dominica. And yes, you can offer 2% interest on loans to certain persons. But let me ask this question, Mr. G, because I don't know the answer. Based on the past, based on the persons who are given the thousands of tickets for the World Creole Festival distributed to who? To supporters. Based on the distribution of houses, to who? To supporters. Based on the distribution of brown paper bags, to who? To supporters. Who do you think will get loans at 2%, Mr. G? Huh? Who do you think will get those interest, those loans at the rate of 2%? You think it will be done equitably? You think it will be done fairly? It will be done just as things have been happening in Dominica, to a select few who are known or believed to be supporters of the political directorate. No amount of budget chicanery can change or alter the fact that it does not cater to the development of Dominica. It caters to a narrow, selfish few. And unfortunately, that is what dooms it as just the latest episode in a cynical attempt to grab and to harness and to harass those who are perceived to be non-supporters and to retard their growth and to significantly damage their businesses. And we as a society, we will never progress if we allow that to go on unabated. I thank you.
Thank you so much for the opening remarks, Dr. Andre. I wanted to go over to Delbert, if Delbert is with us presently, to talk about the budget, because we know of Delbert's presentation in the Parliament on the budget was very impressive, and it's been talked about all over Dominica and outside of Dominica as well. And Delbert, I wanted to come to you because you specifically dealt with the budget reconciliation, which I think we need to focus on. Not just what has failed and what has flawed, but I mean to focus on the real nitty gritty of that budget. And I think you did a great job of that. Maybe you can help us out tonight on that. You want to unmute your mic?
Yeah, good night, Mr. G. Good night to everyone on the panel, Dr. Andre, Mr. Jolly. I don't think anybody has called Andy Mr. Jolly in a long time. A good night to you, Andy, and to those of you in the studio, Silambi in the studio, keeping us connected. Thank you for having me on, Mr. G. It's a pleasure to be back on Global View. It's been a while. I had some things to take care of. And before I get started, I want to apologize to the listeners for standing them up last week. I did promise Mr. G that I would be on, but Parliament went a little longer than I expected to, up into the night. And, I had a duty to perform, so I had to stay. I had to stay in the chamber. But it's good to be here. Hopefully we can have a good conversation on what happened last week and what's the look ahead for this current fiscal period. My presentation, within the 30 minutes that I had, thankfully I got a few extra minutes to complete my presentation. But the one of the things I set out to do early was to establish the fact that this is a skewed conversation in the Parliament during the budget process, or the budget approval process. Because what tends to happen is that we're mixing the budget address with the budget estimates and whatever reconciliation that we're supposed to be doing. And that I think is flawed, and table the idea that we should separate them. Let's come and talk about the fiscal policy statement presented by the Minister of Finance. Let's go through that. Let's bounce some ideas off of each other, and let's debate what position, how we should be positioning Dominica for the next 10, 15, 20 years. What we should be doing now as an administration, and as those of us in opposition as well, what we should be doing now to position Dominica. Of course, that has to be backed by financial allocations, but that is different from going through the actual estimates and looking at the allocations, not just on the recurring side, because you see sometimes that too kind of gets skewed. That conversation also gets skewed, where we're mixing up recurrent allocations with PSIP or project implementation, right? On what we're proposing for investment into the economy that would allow us to realize some growth within the fiscal period, or position us to realize some growth within a number of periods coming. That tends to get muddled. So your recurrent allocations, those are expected. That's what keeps the government and the ministries running. That's your salaries, that's your emoluments, that's your retirement packages. That's all those things that we expect to pay for. We keeping the lights on. Those are recurrent. That's not where you're expecting returns. Those are recurrent. That's salaries. Andy would know a lot about that. That's not where he's putting his that's not his S&P 500 money. That's salaries, right? When you talk about the PSIP, Public Sector Investment Program, that's where we're looking at new investment. we're injecting money into critical industries, into critical ministries that we're expecting to help support growth and expansion of our economy in very strategic ways. And that's where I think our debate needs to rest, because our salary is going to come. We have to keep the lights on regardless. That has to go through. Of course, we have to manage it well, but that has to go through. We need to keep the business running. But how are we growing this business called Dominica? How are we expanding this economy called the economy of Dominica? How are we ensuring that every dollar that is spent or allocated gets put into the right industries and gets put into the right growth engines that are going to allow us to realize the growth that we've projected to have either by 2026, 27, 2030. A lot of talk about 2030. Obviously, we have the SDGs and whatever the case is that we've aligned ourselves to. But that's where our focus as legislators and as leaders and as business people, because all of these legislations, from the time they're passed in Parliament, it starts affecting your business immediately, right? So there is where the conversation really should lie. And I personally I hold the belief that conversation should be separated. So my job in the 30 minutes that I have in the Parliament, Mr. G, I spend all of it there. And I still can't go through the plethora of issues and concerns and questions and queries that we have. But I spend my time there making sure that I highlight the most pertinent things that I think would add some value to the conversation, but also bring some light, share some education, bring some awareness to the people of Dominica. Because at the end of the day, our responsibility is to the people of Dominica. This is their money. This is not any of ours in the Parliament. It is the peoples of Dominica's money. And what we do will affect the future of their children. So my responsibility there, bring those things up, ask the right questions, and seek to create enough momentum in the conversation that we get the discourse that satisfies the people's concern, and that we can obviously make better decisions about what we do going forward. A number of areas that I personally take issue with is massive underperformance. Why are we budgeting 900? I'll get the figure. We budgeting $934 million, and we have $314 million unspent. That's overall from our public sector investment program last year. That's overall. All of that is unspent. I heard some very unfortunate rebuttals that even if it's budgeted there, that don't mean the money is there, and so on and so. That's very juvenile responses to budget. Because if I worked for Andy and I was budget controller, and that was my response, he has the right to fire me on the spot without a second thought. That's absolute rubbish. You shouldn't say that to people that you're responsible to, because there must have been a justification for why you thought that, one, this project was a good idea, two, that it would have produced the results and the growth that you projected, and three, that you would have been able to raise or collect the finances through revenue streams to fund it, to fund the exercise, right? There's a project, there's a budget justification process that you have to go through. So you don't tell me that you didn't spend 70% of your budget and you go whoopsie. No, that's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. It means that you should get less money this year. But if you keep getting less money, it means that the growth rate that you're projecting is not going to be realized, and that is unacceptable for the growth of a country, right? People's lives depend on the government growing the economy, particularly through the PSIP program. And those are some of the things that I found inconsistent. I found it's very disappointing that the ministers responsible do not take the time to say, hey, we had some challenges. These are the challenges that we had during this fiscal period. This is what we went through in the Ministry of Youth, Culture, Sports, and Community Development. This is what we went through in the Ministry of Agriculture. This is what we went through in the Ministry of Tourism. This is what we went through in the services and manufacturing sector. This is what happened in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade, International Business, and Energy, why we spent only 38% of our budget. This is the things that we went through. However, this is the mitigating measures that we have taken to overcome those challenges and ensure that we have better execution. We're projecting a 95% execution in this term, and this is what justifies us putting more money under the PSIP programs in these areas. That when our politicians start to do that, that is when we start to have fiscal accountability and fiscal responsibility in this place. And that is when we start showing respect for the people of Dominica and value for their life and livelihood that they have spent years building and trying to sustain in Dominica against all odds. And Mr. G, that is my focus in the parliament. That is what I'm geared at bringing to light, making sure that we can hold people accountable for the jobs that they are hired to do and the job that they say that they're doing, and justifying their paycheck every month. We can go through some of it, but I don't want to monopolize the time. I know we have a short time here. Later on in the program, we can start diving into some critical areas that I really want to talk about, because I think people should really know about those things and really start asking their representatives some serious questions and holding them to account.
Well, thanks a lot for these opening remarks, Senator Delbert Paris. I mean, as I said, I indicated, your presentation in Parliament was impressive. And it obviously, you're making the point here again tonight and reaffirming that. But Andy, you're the businessman.
I am the businessman. And I'll tell you, Delbert, you're hired. That's it.
Right. Now, Andy, Delbert just went through a summary of what his presentation was in the book.
He did. And Mr. G, I don't know why they don't let Delbert talk for longer in Parliament. And everything he said was spot on. And I think Delbert understands that because he has a business background. A lot of the people that we have in Parliament have never run a business. And Dominica should be run as a business. Dominica is considered as a small town. It's 50,000 people. And if you take a look at it, we do not need a bunch of bureaucracy to run Dominica. And if we were running Dominica, and I'm going to go back 20, 25 years ago, the exact same way that Delbert mentioned, with the respect that it's needed and the idea that it's needed, we would be a very successful country. But I think, to Delbert's point, what he said, which was the most important part of what Delbert said, and I think people should take note here, is that there's no respect for the Dominican money. And there is the belief that everything that is done in there, it should be to catch a vote, or to catch a person, or to catch somebody in terms of making sure that person is on my side or with me. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Things are supposed to be thought of on a grander scale. We're doing things for Dominica. Let's make sure every Dominican can benefit. Another thing I think that Delbert touched on that a lot of people don't understand out there is that here it is that we have a lot of politicians in Parliament and they're spending people's money recklessly. They're not doing due diligence. If you notice, one of the things Delbert said, he said, make sure we can get a return on our investment. Make sure when we invest $1, we can get back 5, 10, 15, and make sure it's benefiting our people. I think a lot of what is done in Parliament right now is not to benefit Dominicans. So Delbert is on the right path. I'm going to tell you, when we run businesses, this is the way business owners think. If you look at the stock market today, any business that comes up on the stock market and doesn't have a good return on their investment, people sell their stock. If the business is corrupt or has any degree of corruption in it, we sell their stock. If the business is not performing as expected, because most businesses are expected to grow at a rate of X percentage, if it's not growing, we sell their stock. If Dominica was a stock, nobody would want to own the stock of Dominica the way it's currently run. And it's very sad to see that happen. in an age like today. And one of the reasons that I agreed to come on your program, Mr. G, and this is a good program, is really not to point fingers at anybody, but it's to say, in a day and age of today, we're in 2025, there's vast knowledge out there. The education that Delbert brings to the table, they give him half an hour, and I think they were even squeezing him a little bit. They gave him a couple extra minutes, and he had to beg for 7 extra minutes. And here am I thinking, God, Jesus, this is important information this man is giving these people. He is telling them serious stuff, and they are not even listening. They're not even paying attention. There were very few people there taking notes. Nobody said, Delbert, can you repeat that, please? So that we could really, or Delbert, can you expound on what you were saying? There were more people in the parliament busy to get Delbert out of the parliament or busy to have him sit down on his seat. And I'm thinking, if Delbert worked for me, I would let everybody else get out of the room and just have Delbert talk, because the information he was bringing was so valuable to Dominica, was so relevant to what is going on today. And here is a man who's literally putting some ideas forward on the table. And you can tell the ideas were serious ideas, because when Honorable Mr. Skerritt was talking, everybody was laughing because he comes across as a joker. He comes across as somebody who's not serious. And in any business, there's always that guy. And that's the first guy that you ask to get out of the room so that we can get with the serious people. We need to understand, we need to start running Dominica like a company. Unless we don't start running Dominica like a real company, like a company with profits, a company with responsible workers, a company with ethics, a company that has valuable resources, and a company that has a growth potential, we will never have people come and fully invest in Dominica. And that is what we're seeing today. People are not coming to invest in Dominica because we have jokers that are making everybody laugh every day. But you can't make people laugh. If on Wall Street, any company, Johnson and Johnson, you can name them by name, Philip Morris, right now you have Nvidia, Microsoft, just you name it, Apple, Amazon. If those companies ever had a meeting like what I saw in Parliament, everybody in that room would have been fired. This was the most comical, nonsensical Parliament that I've seen. And not only that, this is the last part that I will go ahead and say, and this really has nothing to do with Delbert, because I don't think Delbert mentioned that. It was the insulting way that the people of Dominica's money is being used to pay for these people to sit in there and joke around for several days. If this was any other organization, these people could not earn a paycheck. So I'm not here to point fingers at anybody, but I am here to tell people, in this day and age, we need to start doing things properly. If we don't do things properly, if we do not do things in a business-like way, if our company does, which is, and when I call it a company, I'm calling Dominica, if we don't have profits, revenues correct, ethical people working for us, if we don't have return on investments, and we just have people spending money recklessly, I wouldn't say we're doomed, but we're in for some significant pain. Delbert outlined several things, and I'm going to tell you a little later in the show. I would really like him to go over some of the numbers, because one of the numbers that was striking to me that he,
You,
yeah, I think I
you,
cut off for a little bit. One
yeah.
of the numbers that he brought up on the floor when he was talking was, I believe it's 8 out of 12 of the different departments actually spent all their money, and 4 out of the 12 overspent their money. And I really want him to go through those numbers again and let people know that if your departments are not spending the money that they are allocated, and like Delbert said, Delbert, we don't have a money problem, right? Is that correct? So we have the money. So, which means that if you're not spending the money, it's you're not doing the required work. You're considered a failure. If the jobs that you said you were going to do are not done, then you're considered as a failure. If your promises are made and not kept, you are a failure. And so much that Delbert brought to the table in terms of the cost overruns that we have seen just shows the inadequacy of the government. If my company had cost overruns like we do in Dominica, we would have to file for bankruptcy about 6 or 7 times. We could not keep up. If I have to get an extra $1 million for a project, I cannot do that. I cannot go to my bank and ask them for an extra $10 million. I can't go to my lenders and tell them, guess what? I budgeted $20, but it really came to $30. They're gonna ask me, but Andy, you're not very good at budget, which means I'm not good at running a company. So Delbert brought up some very interesting points, and all I beg the public to do tonight is to listen to those points and listen to the numbers. And you'll see that we have a very ineffective group of people and running the country. We have our inexperience and our ineffectiveness is going to cost Dominica so many opportunities. So I want everybody to listen to him. I want everybody to listen to the numbers. These numbers are very impressive. What he said in Parliament, I don't think any one of us here, Mr. G, can ever say it any better. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I'll come back to Delbert in a minute to talk about the figures as Andy is requesting, but I want to go back to Dr. Andre. Dr. Andre, because Delbert revealed a statistic there that about either 60 or 70% of the allocations are actually spent in those ministries. But at the same time, you have the Prime Minister's office getting a big part of the pie, of the budget pie, and yet all the projects under his ministry are supposed to be funded by the CBI program, and yet the Prime Minister's ministry has so much money allocated to it. And yet the other, and his ministry, obviously, I believe, Delbert will correct me if I'm wrong, spent all its money, and his wife's ministry spent all her money as well. But for some reason, many of the other ministries, they did not spend 50% of their money. Is that a deliberate sabotage of those? Is somebody controlling this money to make sure where it flows, in which ministry it flows? Your thoughts, Dr. Andre?
That is the most cogent evidence that the whole business of development in Dominica is not being addressed by any type of budgetary pontifications. Let's take an example. If you have a minister of sports, they have $10 million to spend. They spend three or four, five, and yet you have a dearth of sporting facilities. There's nothing in Roseau to engender sporting excellence, whether cricket, football, basketball, table tennis, whatever it is. You have a similar dearth in Grand Bay. You have a similar dearth in the Kalinago territory. You have a similar dearth in a number of villages in Dominica. And those needs are not being addressed, despite the fact that there are allocations which would go a significant way to providing the appropriate facilities to engender sporting development in Dominica. Then what you think is the reason and justification? Let me throw out one. You have this phenomenon, and it goes across the board of virtually all ministries. Things are not being spent. It's that the art or the task of governance is not viewed as a means of ameliorating the conditions of people across the board, irrespective of political affiliation. If there's a perception that by building this cricket facility in some village will benefit not only our supporters, but everybody else, all of a sudden there's a reluctance. Look at the housing industry that they boast so much about. Compare them with Bath Estate and other estates and other housing developments. Compare the quality of buildings. Compared to the sewage system, for God's sakes. Compare it to the dearth of titles of those who benefit from those, and compare those who benefit from what transpired in the past, where the housing was available to all and sundry who were prepared to acquire these things. So the whole business of development is being viewed with a very jaundiced eye, with a very partisan eye. And it is not really development. It is rewarding those who you believe support you and screwing the others. That is why in Parliament or wherever it is, we would boast of a hotelier who can't afford a tin of paint. And we're giving $30 million to someone in terms of commission involving a sale of passports for a hotel that at best is 10%, operates at 10% capacity in terms of visitors. So someone has said that the whole business of governance has been hijacked. And this is Exhibit A, that past budget is Exhibit A, that is in fact the correct thing. So let us not lament. Let us not lament about the fact that much of this money is not being spent. It is not being spent deliberately because it will benefit everybody. And that's the very antithesis of what they want. It's like giving brown paper bags to everybody at Christmas, or giving turkeys to everybody at Christmas. And you know as well as I know it ain't happening at all. You have persons, small businesses who have given money to fill out applications to get a grant to foster and grow their business. And they got nothing. And if you do an indirect poll, or you assess some anecdotal evidence, you will see that those who got nothing are those who are perceived to be on the other side of purgatory, on the side of those who are not in support of the political directory. So we are in a zone, unless we come out of that pit of mud, we will never see true development. We will always put all our eggs in the foreign basket. And the foreign basket, they don't distinguish themselves by the quality of their work. They don't distinguish themselves by the timeliness of their work. They don't distinguish themselves by the cost of their work, because their work is typically characterized by overruns. And what we all know is happening, kickbacks. So we'll never prosper with that type of situation in Dominica. We have to change it.
Thank you, Dr. Andre. Now, Delbert, let me come back to you now. Andy asked you about these numbers. I mean, and this reconciliation is a key. I mean, you spoke about the public sector investment program. I mean, this is where you're supposed to get the growth and all that and so on. But it ain't happening. It's just not happening. No, you can delve into those numbers and tell us what's going on behind the scene.
Yeah. So, Mr. G, one of the things that I'm really happy for this opportunity, because it'll get us to see what the pattern is and what the pattern of expenditure is. Every businessman knows where your heart is where you spend the money. Where your emphasis is where you're going to see. Where you spend money will tell people what you're interested in, and that will show. Numbers will not lie to you. They'll always tell you the truth. And Andy mentioned that I was teaching once. So for a short minute, I'm going to teach for a little bit, not for very long. When they give you this book, 427 pages, right? One of the difficulties is that, again, a little bit of misconstruing is that people think that you can look just at this book and you can do the reconciliation. You can't.
But how much time do you get to read that book?
Maybe about a week. About a week. We get the book before. About a week. But, we have some support and we have a little bit of way of getting it done. But in order for you to go through this, you have to be able to go through the one before and the current one. That's how you get the figures and you recognize where the differences are. And you go through the occurrence, you see all of the data, you go all in the back and you get all of the details. But you're able now to compare what was approved last year and what was actually spent this year. They do not show it in any one book. So that's part of the trick. So after we get confused with all of the debates with the budget address, and then we get the one book, we're really relying just on what they're saying to figure out our way through, right? And if there's not anybody that is aware enough on the opposition side, or the free group of us, trying to bring out these information in terms of what they spend it on, then you don't get to know. Another thing that is done that really confuses people in their analysis and their review of the government's performance in the fiscal year is that you hear them talking about projects that they have done, but a lot of it is not confined to the one fiscal period that they're seeking approval for. You hear them talking about projects as far back as Maria and Erica and overcoming COVID and all of those things. Yeah, we understand that and we appreciate that and thank you, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you did last year to now, 12 months. That's the cycle that we're looking at, and that's what we want you to focus on. And I think if they focused in on that and the performance, particularly in the public sector investment program, then I think people would get a greater picture of what actually happened. And he spoke about something that I mentioned in my presentation.
Delbert, I want to interject here. Do you think if they stuck to that time period, how many of them in there would still have jobs?
Well, I don't know. The way their performance, I don't know how they get rewarded for performance is very strange. But I can tell you one thing: their presentations would be a lot shorter. It wouldn't take all the time that it took, because it wouldn't fill up all that space. But that's one of the things that happens. They talk about a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of fluff in there, and then they have a little bit of talk about what they plan to do next year, and it's cut off, right? Let's go into the numbers. And Mr. G, I can actually probably share this document with you for later, but let's look at a few of them. So we're not going to touch on the Office of the President or House of Assembly, National Security, Legal Affairs. No, we're going to go straight into some of the more critical ministries. First off, Ministry of Finance only spent 27% of its public sector investment allocation in 2024-2025. The Ministry of Agriculture was awarded $52 million. It only spent $17 million out of that allocation, which amounted to 33.9%. Ministry of Housing and Urban Development awarded $70 million, only spent $34 million, 49.39%. Let's look at tourism. Tourism was awarded we had approved $17.1 million. They were only able to spend $8 million in the period, 46% of its allocation. The sports, culture, community development, and youth approved $11 million, $11.7 million, only spent $2 million, only spent 23% of its allocation. Establishment only spent 15% of its allocation. That's what we invested in people and training and departments. Huh? That's the establishment. Let's look at the public works and public utilities. Did a little better. They spent 75% of their allocation. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Business, Trade and Energy, 38%. Labor, Public Service Reform, Social Partnership, Entrepreneurship, and Small Business Development only spent 61% of their allocation. Now, Mr. G, when you look at that, that's horrible performance in key sectors that you're looking to create a level of buoyancy that will help to grow the economy. Now, their responsibility is to come back and say why. Why didn't we spend the allocation? What was difficult under the Ministry of Youth, right? Let's look under the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, where I think we had the allocation for the 40 and under housing allocation, right? We say we want to help young people to get their housing. We're going to give them some money. $500,000 approved in 2024-2025. $0. Nothing was spent. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Now, Mr. G, here's the thing. I am not in the ministry. I am not in the FS's computer. I don't know what's going on there. I can only rely on the numbers that they give me. All right. Their job when we point these things out is to come and say why. You hear the minister of sports, of youth sports and community development come back and say now over 300 and somebody people applied, but they were never awarded. I had people after that, even on social media, saying, hey, me and my husband applied. How many years ago? Because it's been rolling over and it was never processed. So there's something with implementation in the administration that they have to fix. All right. And
Well,
I give
Delbert,
it
Delbert,
may not be something sinister, but there's a problem that exists because you keep showing that you didn't spend the money there. Let's look at the Ministry of Agriculture. A number of things, a number of feeder roads,
well,
number of
well,
irrigation.
Delbert, you mind if I interrupt you for just one
Sure,
second?
sure.
And this is where I would like to tell people, because the points that you're raising are very important. And this is a couple points that reduce Dominica's success. So, in your opinion, how long has this been going on? Because from my understanding, we do a budget yearly, correct?
It's annual, yeah.
How annual? So how long has this been going on? Because if this has been going on for very long, this will be a possible reasoning why we're not getting ahead in Dominica. We're talking about things. We're making big plans in Parliament. We're making headlines in Parliament, but we're not implementing any of the things that we're talking about. So, in your opinion, how many budgets do you think that we've gone by and this has happened?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Andy. I don't want to go and say, I want to actually do the research to find out. But what I can tell you, since I have been in the parliament, this is a trend. This is a behavior. We see this every year. We see this type of activity every year. And to be fair, I'll make the concession. I'll make the concession because data doesn't lie. I'll make the concession. And I said it in my presentation in the parliament. The Ministry of Agriculture actually had a 2% growth. You look on the World Bank, you look in the budget documents, you look on the selected data, and the Ministry of Agriculture actually had a 2% growth from last year to this year. And that's great. All right.
Yeah,
But
but
that is what bothers me. And here's
don't
why.
don't
Here's why it
don't
bothers
you
me.
think don't you think the 2% is still an underperformance, technically speaking? Because if
It's
we
it's
had X
massive.
amount of it's an underperformance. If we had so much money allocated, that ministry actually underperformed because, like you said, it should have had a 12 or 15%. It came up with
Correct.
2%. So that's an
Correct.
underperformance technically.
Correct. Correct. And that's the point. That's the point I'm making. Because if at 34% implementation, you grew by 2%. What if you had 90% implementation? What could your growth have actually looked like? How many more farmers would that have benefited? How many more local businesses and vendors could that have benefited? How much more income and revenue could have circulated in our economy and provided a certain level of buoyancy from just one ministry, from one growth engine? If you are able to see 2% at that implementation and you extrapolate it out, how much more could we have grown if you had the mechanisms to implement the allocations that you had? And that is where the problem becomes. That's where the problem starts to show up. Tourism, the same thing. Tourism had some growth as well. Tourism had some growth, particularly in cruise tourism. Obviously, some of the data is showing that the growth that you see in cruise in the tourism industry is because of an organic bounce back in cruise tourism and arrivals and so on and so forth. We'll give them that, no problem. And hotels, you saw the same thing. You saw that the hotel and Airbnb sector, they had some buoyancy, right? Fair. But tourism still had massive underperformance. What could have happened if a number of those projects, if we had built back if we had done more work on our sites, if we had implemented the cruise village, a number of these things still left undone, things that they plan to do. And I'll give it to them. I'll give it to them. Ideas are a dime a dozen. It's not for a lack of ideas. I mean, we look around Dominica, we're not short on having ideas and dreams. When the rubber meets the road, we have an issue with implementation. We have an implementation with follow. We have an issue with follow through. We have an issue with holding ourselves and the people responsible, with holding them accountable for doing the job that they say they were going to do and doing the job that they get paid to do. And that's where the problem is, because there's no repercussions for any of these ministries for not performing well.
Well,
There's
Delbert,
no
can I interject one more time? And I want to bring these points up to the people because you see, I'm a businessman and I like what you're saying so far and I understand it perfectly. And I know to some people it's not clear, but really and truly, if we had executed properly, then what Delbert is saying that we would be so much further ahead. However, we're lagging behind. And what I want to tell everybody here is the reason that so many other countries around us are progressing much better than us is because these people have better execution. And not only that, they are doing bipartisan politics. They are not sitting down and saying, well, I only want to do this if it benefits such and such or a particular segment of the population. They are executing to make sure that these projects come to fruition for the benefit of the entire country. So really and truly, what Delbert is saying is that Dominica should have had a 10% growth extra. However, we lost 10% of growth, and everybody know time is money. If we lose that 10% every year, we're basically lagging behind in Dominica as a country. And I'm going to just follow it up. Let's pretend Dominica is a business. If that person was sitting in a meeting and their numbers fell short by that much, that person would have to get up and be fired immediately. Since there is no repercussion for it, everything gets passed by. And not only that, I think the audacity of the people, and I saw this happen, Delbert, it's when they were talking, there was clapping going on. Like, oh, we had a 2% increase. There was something too. So Delbert is mentioning these numbers, and this is why I wanted to interject a little bit, that the 2% growth that we got and everybody clapped their hand, that 2% was actually a failure. That 2% was, and Delbert was conservative on his calculation. If we had done the required work, that 2% was supposed to be a 15% success, which is technically 6 to 8 times the amount of growth we should have had, and we fell short by 6 times. So I want everybody to understand that this is how a good company should operate.
Lambi, you want to take a call?
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, it's sad to say, but Dominica will go nowhere because we have a bunch of parasites running the country. Guys who know nothing about running the country. All they do is fund up their pocket, getting wealthy and wealthier day by day, and that's all they care about. Okay, thank you.
And thanks a lot for that. You know, Dr. Andre, let me just bring you in here briefly because you see, Delbert has made some strong points there. Delbert said you get a return on your investment. Well, we're supposed to get a return on investment based on in terms of benefits to Dominicans. You know, you're supposed to see the benefits in Dominicans' living conditions, their lifestyle, the quality of life, and so on. But then that is not happening. Instead, you have mass migration. Now, you know, a few years ago,
$1,900 plus you have to pay for.
Somebody's mic is on, and we're hearing the feedback coming through. But you know, one of the things, Dr. Andre, that we can recall very vividly, the Prime Minister changed his team of candidates on 2 separate occasions. As a matter of fact, I mean, I remember one instance when the candidates that were supposed to run came there prepared to be presented on stage, and then somebody else was called, and the candidate left and turned around and went back home. Now, obviously, he is really admitting that they were not performing. And, you know, Andy asked Delbert about how many succeeding budgets. His performance has fallen short. I think the Prime Minister recognized that the performance was short, and in fact, he even told his candidates. In fact, he blamed them, and he said, "Look, he's gonna have to change them because some of them are not responding to the constituents. They were not getting results." So, in all of that, in terms of the return on the investment benefiting Dominicans as a whole, your thoughts on the performance of this regime?
Well, there's nothing we can boast about. I mean, I'm going to say something, but let me say that these are not my words, so don't take it from me. Don't blame the messenger. These are the words of a former minister of government from the cottage area. And he famously said, or should I say infamously said, we're the last in everything. So he's an insider. He knows better than I. So if he tells you we're last in everything, then obviously that, in fact, is the case. And as I said, look at any index of development that you can. Investment, Dominicans, the local business, agro industry in your country. We export. I mean, let's talk. Take the whole question of export, because they've been talking about providing ships for donkey years. There's a fellow in Portsmouth I know quite well, although he's much older than I. His name is Neville Wade. He's been in the business for 50 years. At one point, he had one of these ferries. I think the last thing I recall is that it's in St. Vincent under repair, and so he probably doesn't have the means to bring it up to speed. One of the problems that we face in terms of shipping and so on is probably a ship that has that facility. What help? What have they tried to do to get such a couple of these ships? The only ship they have is not even on the savannah; it's on the little farms of some farmers. That's the only ship you can find in Dominica. No effort, but a full of excuses, because they do not want to incentivize or energize or empower local business, unless, of course, it's some crony, for God's sakes, who can facilitate the transfer of money under the table. There's no effort being made. None. You give a few homes, the fact that the sanitation is below standard, especially when you compare it to homes which were built by Dominicans years ago, and the folks are happy. We have to have a higher expectation of those we elect. And another thing, the whole question of ministerial selection. I mean, the joke is that you made reference to the fact that the Prime Minister said they have to work for their constituents. But who select these ministers? You think it's the constituents? You really think so? No, they are anointed and appointed by the El Supremo. So they are not accountable. Well, except to the El Supremo, as long as they do the bidding. And the factor that has the most value is loyalty, not productivity, not honesty, not integrity, not dedication to making Dominica a better place. The predominant factor is loyalty. How can the country progress if that is the ethos you're bringing to the table in terms of governance? How loyal someone is to you. And you remember Ian Douglas? Ian, you have no shame. Years ago, Ian lamented, if you go in a room and you have a nicer shirt than the primo, he get vexed with you. He fâché, so. And what do you expect? You have an atmosphere of toxicity, of fear, of not wanting to do anything that will incur the wrath of your leader. Not even if it involves developing your own people, your own constituency, your constituents. So it is no mystery as to why we are caught in this quagmire. There is no mystery because there's no ethos of governance, of development that we can boast of. Even businesses which are doing well. I mean, I talked about Josephine Gabriel. They're actually building, Mr. G, a new bottling plant, which is scheduled to be completed in October of this year. And you have a Minister of Trade, Gasson, cutting them up. Why? You think they would cut up Gadakan? You think they would cut up the company that built that grammar school and the roof fell? Fortunately, no one died. You think they would cut up any of these folk? You think they would cut up any business who built a building and you have the toilet stinking in less than a year? You think they will cut them up? They will not. So we have ourselves to blame. That's the bottom line. If we're not prepared to right the ship of state, and as Mr. Jolie always talks about business and governing business and running your business with a view to watching the bottom line, delivering a service, reaping rewards, so that you can say by your sweat of your brow you are eating bread, not by the sweat of a brown paper bag, for God's sakes. Let those on some other radio stations say that. But if we don't embrace that ethos, we are doomed. And quite frankly, I am happy to say I haven't lived my life governed by the thought that I am doomed. Because every day, every week, I ask myself, what have you done to prosecute your goal, to achieve something you all had back over? And that is the value we have to instill in our folk. What have you, look at the mirror and say, what have you done for you lately? What have you done to develop, to hone your skills, to achieve your goals, to make some sacrifices to get ahead? What have you done? As opposed to waiting with a cup of bowl of soup or empty bowl, for God's sakes, waiting for somebody to put a little something in it while robbing you blind. We have to change the scheme of things entire. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andre. Now, Delbert, let me just come back to you. It's obvious, as Andy was saying, it's obvious that we have a problem with implementation. It seems that for several budgets, we've had that problem, a performance limitation. And it's clear it is resulting in the lack of development of the country, because if the ministries are not spending their money, they're not investing the money to develop the people and the private sector and so on, they're not creating an enabling policy environment for the private sector to thrive and for people to be able to earn a decent living. It's obvious that we cannot compare ourselves to our neighboring territories that are better implementers than we are. Now, if we go back to before this administration came into office, when the United Workers' Party was in office, in 4.5 years, look at the extent of the implementation that they had. Look at the extent of the accomplishments that they had. So it is clear that this administration has a problem of performance. I mean, it's reflecting in the budget when you compare the budgets of the year by year by year. And clearly, the problem is implementation, because they're not really spending the money allocated to them. Give us a little bit more information on this, Delbert. You're muted.
Yeah, and that's the whole crux of the thing, Mr. G. It's a lack of implementation, and that's where the struggle is. As a matter of fact, in one scenario in during the debate, I tabled the idea that it couldn't be that the minister and his financial officer, which is the PS, didn't want to spend the money. It must be a situation where they will being prevented from spending the money, from being prevented from having the actual implementation that they propose to want to have. And they don't seem confident enough or brave enough to actually see what the problem is. Only one person say, well, the money was never there to begin with. And, it's not just because the allocation is there, that doesn't mean the money is actually there. Well, that doesn't cut it. And we can't accept that, because there's a reason why you're doing the budget. And to be fair, Mr. G, it is my belief, somebody can fact check me if they so desire, I think some of this budgeting period is above some of the guys' pay grade. They're not involved in it at all. They probably don't make the level of contribution that will allow them to speak to it in an effective way. So it's probably above their pay grade, and
So Delbert, are you saying that this budget has been doctored up by any chance? So
well, I
because
don't
I
know.
mean, to the sense that if somebody's making a budget, which is a very important thing for a business, because I mean we're talking about how we're gonna spend money, and that person either did not allocate the correct amount or was unsure if the money was even there to begin with. So the problem is the budget is doctored up because technically speaking, you're making a budget for money that's not present. So can you speak to that a little bit?
No, I can't speak to that from a factual position, but from an experience position, I can see that that cannot be your response when challenged as to why you didn't implement what you budgeted for. I can't say that. I can't say what's happening in there, but I'm saying you cannot proffer that as a response to say, well, the money was never there. It was just a projection. No, that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. And that's why I'm saying, well, maybe that individual or a number of individuals not sure what's happening. So, that could have been a slip of the tongue as a type of response to push back on legitimate questions as to why you're not implementing the allocations to vital in ministries such as youth and sports. I mean, look at what's going on in our music industry. Our young people are doing remarkable. Now, people can it's always up for debate whether you like their music or you don't like it. That's not what we're debating. We're saying if we're so interested in them, we should help them to do the thing that they're doing well. Let's help them to do it well. Let's protect the industry. Let's protect the brand. Let's develop a music and entertainment policy that all of them are going to operate under. But why haven't we seen that? And I'm saying, okay, it's not because we didn't have money, because we have $9 million for that ministry unspent. It means if we had to do a environment or something and shift it around or something of the case, we had the finances to do it. And it's the government. The cabinet can make that decision single-handedly. They didn't have to come back to parliament to do that. I'm saying where our interest is, that's where you see the money being spent. There's another one where we dealt with the garbage issue, the garbage collection and adequate disposal issue. I mean, how much longer are we going to make excuses? I saw that right after the budget last week. I saw 2 trucks landed. Thank God. I hope they can take care of them and we can actually see some relief happening in terms of garbage collection. But we still have a problem at the landfill because the landfill is past its usable lifespan. It can no longer be used. And that's why you're seeing the problems and the difficulties that you have happening there. And the people in the environment are suffering for it. And I'm saying, what are we doing? It's not that we don't have the money, because the environmental surcharge, which is recorded in this document here, we pick up the monies to handle that. So what are we doing with the money? Last 2 years, over $22 million has been collected. And what have we done with it? And that's just the last 2 years. What about the last 10 years? What have we done with the money? And how have we assisted the Solid Waste Management Corporation to ensure that we're dealing with this problem? Hold on 1 second, Andy. Let me just get this out.
Yes, go ahead.
What have we done to assist the Solid Waste Management Corporation to ensure that we have an efficient service when it comes to garbage collection and disposal and even recycling and all of those things? Yes, I totally accept the fact that we have to be more responsible as a people. Culturally, we have to do better. Culturally, nobody needs to tell you to separate your refuge from your home. Nobody needs to tell you, guys, we can't be eating from whatever containers that we're eating and drop it on the floor as if somebody's there to pick it up after us. We have to be more responsible. But I'm saying, it's not because we need to do better as a people that we're still at the landfill 5 to 6 years after it's past its useful life. That's not that's trying to shift the blame. It's not because Dominicans are less responsible or they need to improve in their garbage disposal responsibility. Why garbage collection trucks are breaking down and they're not being maintained or replaced. Let's not confuse the issue and pass on responsibilities from an administrative perspective to people. Let's do our jobs and assist people with awareness, education, and support to do better, because we have the finances to do it and we're not doing it.
Well, Delbert, I'm going to help you make your point a little bit, because I think what you might have missed is that the Dominican people need to understand what's going on there. And I don't think whether they understand. For most people, when you talk about $22 million, they don't understand. So for everybody out there, everything that comes for the customs, I don't care. I think no matter if it's a car or if it's a bottle or if it's a box that you bring in, there's a 1.5% charge on there, I believe, that is supposed to go to an environmental tax. And I believe that was put on back in what 2011 or 12, somewhere there. And that money is being collected on everything that we bring into the country. And that money was supposed to be used primarily for garbage collection and for dealing with our waste. However, that money for the last, I don't know how many exact years, somebody could fact check it and tell me, and Delbert is talking about where has all that money gone. So I believe the number is $22 million for the last 2 years. However, our garbage trucks are in disrepair. So a lot of it is accountability. We've set something in place that said, here is the fund that we need to take care of our garbage. However, the effectiveness is down. And Delbert mentioned the two trucks coming in. And the question is, if we're collecting $22 million, why can't we get those trucks going? And Delbert, the last thing that I want you, I'm going to probably ask you a question on, and I know the answer to that because, again, this is what I do in business. Do you think that the amount of money not being spent in all those different ministries are due to the probably is due to the fact that the ministers or the people who are running these different ministries are ineffective? Because the last thing I would want to do, Delbert, is to give people who do not know how to spend the money. So maybe you can speak on that.
1 second, Delbert. Let's go to let's take a telephone call.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, please, caller.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Mr. G. Good evening to the panel. Esteemed. Yeah, really great conversation. I I want to go back a little to Brother Andre and where he left off and his presentation and that broader global conversation that he brought. I want to applaud him for it. I think it was a great presentation. In terms of where it took us, credibility and value and humanity. I think those things are lost in that process. On the issue in terms of Dominica, Mr. J, and the others, great presentation, from Brother Paris and so forth. I want to make us see there's a common thread, There's a common thread. Paris talks about it as a pay grade thing. It's not a pay grade thing, my brother. It's deeper than that. It's the psychology that runs the government. It's singular. That's why these things are happening. What we have is inconsistencies. None of these PSs have executive process. None of them. That's what it is. It's one mind running the system, and it runs to these areas when emergencies come, and that's it's one mind. That is, it's one mind. You understand? And so you have to change this. If it changes, it's not how much more resources you put into it, it's not how much more this you add to it, it's none of those things. The system is incoherent governmentally, incoherent. And it's because these people do not have executive power. Government is not functioning as governance. And so I applaud Paris on that presentation, but we have to take this, the conversation is there. There's a reason. And that reason is consistent for the last 20-something years. Consistent. One mind is running governance in Dominica, and it's not enough. It's not enough. And it will never meet the expectations because that one mind cannot work with other minds in the way that they're supposed to work. I applaud the presentation. Give thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. Dr. Andre, the caller mentioned you. Let me just go back to you for a minute. Somebody on the panel mentioned the fact that there is no respect for Dominicans' money. People are just treating Dominicans' money willy-nilly. Now, there is something called the national debt. You notice earlier on I said, is there national development or is just the accumulation of national debt? I will ask Delbert that question after you, Dr. Andre. What really payment is being made down on the national debt? Because that national debt has been skyrocketing. Dr. Andre,
well, it is skyrocketing. One of the primary reasons it's skyrocketing is that the hundreds of millions of dollars according to a crony who was involved intimately, I should say, in the sale of passports. Those monies have been hidden in mysterious accounts in Europe and elsewhere, and they're being used to fund a very extravagant lifestyle which is hidden from the view of Dominicans. It is not being mobilized on behalf of the Dominican people. On the contrary, you see the irony? We are busy, we as a government or we as a country, we are busy looking for loans from from every international organization. Somebody made a point on your radio station, Mr. G. How many times have they borrowed money to fix up Roseau? Where the money gone? Didn't they receive money to build some customs facility on the northern coast towards the top of Dominica? Where is that money? And the list can go on and on and on. The money has a habit of disappearing. And you know what? The international organizations have to take some responsibility because there's no audit. I mean, if I lend you money to build a fall cage, I want to see that fall cage, Gasson. You see what I'm saying to you? And there is none of that. So unfortunately, you have many of these organizations, they enable misgovernance to the detriment of the Dominican people. After COVID, what happened? Was it not the World Health Organization gave the Dominican government $30 million to provide COVID relief? Mr. G, I know you're not in Dominica, but ask any of your panel, Delbert, for example, Lambi, what relief did you get? The money disappeared mysteriously. And all we knew, there were brown paper bags passing in the middle of the night or in the late evening. And sometimes at the head of the convoy was the local parliamentary representative. So the corruption has metastasized in the very bones of the Dominican body politic. And therein lies the problem. Nothing is being mobilized on a massive scale to the benefit of Dominica, to take it to a next place, a next reality, to build industry, to build business, to empower people, to provide jobs for young persons, to institute a program of technology to get us into the 21st century or the 22nd one, whichever it is. It is not being addressed because that is not the priority. The priority is how many house of dark secrets I can build, how many hotel structures I can hide by putting them in the names of cronies who clutch their Gideon Bibles tighter than a dog on a bone. If that is what governance has been reduced to, then how can we lament the lack of good governance or of development in Dominica? No, you cannot get what? I can't remember what it is, but probably is best it's not said. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Andre. Lambi, do you want to take a call?
Let's hope the caller is still there. Caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still there, Lambi. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm listening. And two things that come in my mind when I look at the way Roosevelt Skerritt and his regime is governing the country. Incompetence and corruption. And we have to call it by its name. Because look at that, Mr. G. Roosevelt Skerritt can be involved in getting tankers to move oil from Iran to China. But he cannot get tankers to move Dominica water. He cannot get ships to move our produce. These guys are focused on themselves. They are not focusing on the people of Dominica. Before, when you listen to Parliament, all these ministers have to give a report of their ministry. And every time they come and speak, they give him singing praises to El Supremo. They themselves have nothing to show. So it's not that they don't want to spend it. They haven't got time for the money, because if they are not getting a kickback, if it doesn't profit them, they don't care. And that's what happening. Look at agriculture. Anywhere you look, it's the same pattern. And I've been listening to Parliament when I was a little boy, and when these ministers come, they have to give a report on their ministry, what was allocated, how much spent, how much is left, what they're trying to do to correct it. Mr. G, the conversation is not that, is who dress better, and they are focused on victimizing people, playing party politics. They haven't got time to do Dominica business, so that's why Dominica will not move forward, because the priorities are in the wrong places for the self and the money and what they can get, and it's corruption, money laundering, it's all kind of stuff. So Dominica is a hyena program that's going on 90% for them and 10% for the country. Anyway, I'm listening. Thank you.
And thanks a lot for that. Before I go to Andy, Lambi, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to give out the numbers so we can take a few calls now if there's people who want to call in.
Yeah, the numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are all local numbers. The overseas or international number, 305-432-9624. Let me run those one more time. 449-3095, 3096, 3097, 616-4257, and 305-432-9624. Back to you, Mr. G.
All right. So, Andy, let's go back to you while we wait for the calls to come in. I mean, having listened to Delbert, having listened to Dr. Andre, I mean, having listened to one or two of the calls that came in, what is your honest assessment of the state of things in our governance in Dominica? The question of accountability, the question of performance, question of implementation, question of transparency. What are your thoughts? If you were running that business, if that business was yours, what would you do with the people involved in implementation?
Well, a lot of what we were talking about, and I think this is where I think it stands, is really from the people being incompetent. And to sum it up, a lot of what Delbert has mentioned just is striking incompetence. You've given people work, you've given them money, you've given them an objective, and if they were to fulfill that objective correctly, then we would both or all have success. The truth is that Dominica is a very small town. It's 50,000 people. We really need to find a way to move this country forward. We have so many natural resources, and Dominica, I've said this before, could be the breadbasket for the Caribbean. I think if we were to start getting things correctly, I think we could really see progress in Dominica. But we need to make sure that things are done right. Our politicians, and I know that we've mentioned quite a bit of maybe that there might be money laundering, maybe dishonesty, and all those things. And I'm really not here to really point that out, because I think in every organization you have some degree of that. I've never really seen a political party that doesn't have some degree of something going on, or some kind of accusation that's going on. But all in all, we have to start to do things right. We have to start to do the budget right. We have to make sure we have effective people. The country needs to progress. So maybe, yes, you want to give the contracts to your friend, and your friend is going to get the job, but at least make sure your friend is going to do a good job, or at least make sure your friend is going to get it done the way that we think it should be done. So many of the projects in Dominica, I'm not against who did them. I have no trouble with that. But when the building is finished, we need to make sure it's a good building. Like, if you wanted to spend, and I'm just going to bring up the grammar school, because I think, Delbert, you probably need to refocus on that again. The grammar school, Okay, fine. We're already over budget on the grammar school, and not over budget by a few $1,000s. We're over budget by several $1,000,000. But yet we're seeing that the construction of the grammar school is poor construction. And not only that, we're seeing rushed work being done. And to add that again, the construction is behind time. So which means we have given somebody a job with zero consequence for getting us the project on time. Our students are not going to be at school when we say they're going to be at school. And here it is that we're giving them a shabby project so that when they do get to school, most of the services that they were expecting to use, or most of the facilities that they're expecting to use, are not solidly built. And again, it's the same thing with the apartments or the houses that we're building. Yes, we're giving the project to our friend, we're over budget on the project, and then we're still getting shabby work. How can we progress as a society with these things? If you're going to give the project to your friend, at least make sure your friend does a good job to validate what you did. At least give people, you have some inconsistencies in your record keeping. Maybe you're a few $1,000,000 short. Maybe there might be kickbacks, but at least give people a good building. At least make them feel satisfied with what they're getting. But the problem is we have all these things going on, and plus we're getting poor work. We're spending the money and we're not getting anything in return. So which does go to show, Delbert, that the reason that we do not spend our entire budget, as long as the money is there, which you've assured me that if we do a budget and the budget is not what they call fluffed up, it's actually called fluffing, Delbert. In my language, we call it fluffing. People put a lot of pork in there, they put a lot of extra numbers to make the budget look big. But when you really dive down to it, it's very hollow. And that is very deceitful. So if we expect to move forward, or if we expect to make Dominica great, if we expect to make Dominica succeed, we have to start being honest with people. We have to start being progressive with people. And we have to make sure that we do our due diligence with every dollar that we spend. There's not a lot of dollars going around the world right now, so we need to start making things work. We need to stop having our parliamentarians as jokers. Anytime you have jokers running a business, then everybody is going to take that business for a joke. We need to get serious and do things right. But I know, Delbert, I'd really like you personally. I'll give up my time so that you could go over to grammar school. And one more thing, Delbert, I'm going to just put on the table and sit back and relax. I loved your presentation on the so-called CBI program where we're not selling passports. And suddenly, and don't get me wrong, I used to teach the math class in school. 1 plus 1 is not equal to 2 anymore. 1 plus 1 on that is actually equal to 11, Delbert. And maybe the mistake was done on our side that 1 plus 1 was not it was not 2. It was actually 11, and 5 plus 5 was 55, and that was your fault. But I'd like you to go through that a little bit. Thank you, Delbert.
All right, so Delbert, you have three things on the table right now on your plate. One of them
Yeah.
is the grammar school, which I believe was well over budget. I mean, you can give us the numbers there, the original
go.
number and the current number, and the fact that it's late, the project is delayed, and still there's shoddy work involved. And then there is the airport project, also similar situation. Give us your thoughts on that, and then of course. Andy mentioned the CBI program. I don't know what you want to make any comments on that, but I mean, you go.
Well, all of these things were already handled in my presentation in Parliament, but I don't have any problems going over it. The grammar school is it's particularly troubling, and there are some issues. I tell people all the time, there are some issues that we can afford to politicize, and there's some issues that all of us have to be on the same side of because of the impact and the result that it has on the economy and the people of Dominica. For some reason, in many of our ministries, we can't seem to find money to spend on critical areas of development for the country. But not so at the grammar school. The grammar school, for some reason, we don't have a problem with money over there. We don't have a problem with money over there at all. Let's go through it. In the Ministry of Education, only one of the ministries that overspent in this scenario, in this period, we had an allocation of $22,801,927 allocated last year. The revised budget, what we're saying that we spent this year was $41,703,692. That is 182.9% of the allocation, or we can say 83% higher than we allocated for. Fair. That's good. Ministry of Education, we're doing things. We have a couple schools online, no problem. That's fine. But when you go down into the figures, you look and you see that for grammar school alone, we budgeted $5 million last year. So out of the 22, $5 million was supposed to go to the grammar school. It was supposed to complete the school because we had no more forward estimates. That would have taken us to a total of north of $76 million for the completion of the grammar school. An exorbitant amount, in my view. Talked about it twice last year. But that was supposed to finish the grammar school and we were supposed to open it. But in this year, after budgeting $5 million, we come now and we see that the expenditure, what we're saying that we spent from last year's budget approval to this year's budget approval, we're saying that we spent $39 million out of the $41 million that we spent on the whole Ministry of Education. That's a serious problem. So now we've moved from $76 million for the completion of the grammar school, what we've seen over there when you pass opposite the gardens. We've moved from 76 million to now 113 million plus, and the school is not complete. And I do not know, nobody's explaining that. And it's not to say that we cannot measure these things. These things are measurable. There's no way, it's unacceptable for your contractor, and I go to bat for contractors all the time. I happen to be one myself. Our projects are not always up to par. We need to do better. We need to do better in managing our finances. We need to do better on time. We need to do better in terms of our quality of our quality control and the finishes that we have. Some of us say that we're contractors and we're not contractors, and we need to be honest with people before we take their money, because you can't say you're a contractor because construction, being a contractor is not just about laying block and steel and plastering. There's a management aspect to it. There's an implementation aspect. There's a capacity aspect to it. So I go to bat for contractors and we take all blows. But there's something, what is happening in the grammar school is beyond construction and contractor malpractice. Something is wrong. Because you cannot tell me that when the project was awarded, it was 20-something million dollars, Let's say it would have been completed for $35 million. As a matter of fact, the first two wings were constructed for a little north of $5.5 million, Andy. And you're telling me the rest of the construction is going to take $113 million before it's complete. And nobody finds that there are not people in the streets on this issue. Something is wrong with that. And this is not my numbers. I didn't create these numbers. This is the government's book. It's the government saying that, not me. The government is saying, hey, this is what we're spending here. And this is the overage that we're experiencing. But the problem gets worse because we're seeing at grammar school this year, and it's a historic event where you're having a type of catastrophic failure that has never happened in Dominica before. And it's not because we haven't done large structures. Look at the church in Pottersville, the Catholic church in Pottersville, where we have that roof. You realize there are no columns in the center? That building has been there and has survived the hurricanes, particularly Hurricane Maria, in its old age, and it never fell. Look at the Granby Secondary School. Look at the Castlebrew Secondary School. Look at the Portsmouth Secondary School. Look at the Northeast Comprehensive Secondary School over there in Wesley, where you have that dome roof. And you don't have columns in the middle, larger than the roof that fell over there. So it's not because we are inexperienced in Dominica. We've never constructed anything of grandeur in Dominica, so to speak. Why we never had accidents before. There's no reason for what happened at grammar school there to happen in 2025. Not with the amount of engineering advancements that we have access to, not with the amount of new construction methodology and material that we have access to, not with the amount of intelligence and power and particularly the fact that money is not our problem. There's no reason for that to happen. Okay, so there's an investigation going on and all of these things is happening and so on and so forth. But that goes beyond just investigation. We have to build back confidence in the people. There are people who are literally terrified of the place because you don't escape. Thank God nobody was hurt, and we praise God Almighty for that. But I'm saying enough effort is not being made to build back trust in the people. One, that we actually got the value for the money that we're paying over there. Something is wrong, terribly wrong, with the amount of money we're spending at grammar school. And I don't make assumptions. I don't want to do that. I don't think it's necessary. We can stick to the facts and achieve the objective. But people are saying, hey, look at the amount of work that's going on there. They hardly had work there this year. How you spent $40 million over there? What's going on? At the same time, the roof is caving in. How is that possible? And nobody is shouting from the rooftop, yo, this is not okay. This is not okay. Something is wrong.
By the way,
I don't understand why this doesn't bother people in that situation.
By the way, Delbert, I'm going to bring to your attention as well. This is also the school that our prime minister is associated with, if I'm correct. Isn't that where he went to school? That's his alma mater. So no other school would have gotten that type of money.
Even worse, I'm saying even if it's its alma mater, but Dominican children are going to go inside of those buildings. We have to assure the public that it's safe. We have to assure the public that, this was a one-off, this was an outlier, and this is what happened that caused the collapse. Either it was an engineering failure, it was a construction failure, it was something of the sort. Explain to people. And Dominican people, I don't underestimate Dominican people, and I think people sometimes try to oversimplify or think that things are too complicated for the Dominican people to understand, and I don't support that. I don't believe that. I think Dominican people are intelligent, and if you explain it to them, they will understand. And I think they deserve an explanation and the respect and the value that we have. We should show them more. This is not a political issue, because there is going to be an event where all of us are going to be there. It's a Dominican, it's a public building. Whether it's for graduation, whether it's for a sporting event, whether it's for a national occasion, it's going to be one of the biggest schools on the island. We're all going to end up there. It's not a political issue, it's a national issue. And something is wrong over there that needs to be addressed. And the people who have the power to address it, they should. The history books are going to be written about Dominica, and people need to come down on the right side of history on this, because something is wrong there. And if we allow it to go on unchecked, we will set a bad precedent, and it has to be corrected. Now, Mr. G, you mentioned the connection with the international airport. Now, I want to be clear. The people involved in the international airport is only the same developer that has the same connection. So the contractors are different, because I think the contractor at there is one, and well, obviously we know that the contractor at the airport is a Chinese company, CR5, etc., right? But the developer is the same developer, right? And I'm saying, here's what the question becomes in terms of public interest and public trust and confidence. People want to know that, hey, you guys are doing everything that you can to make sure that these types of things never happen again. These types of that nobody is vulnerable. People want to be sure. And I think a responsible developer in partnership with a responsible government, would do every single thing it takes to reassure the public that, hey, guys, we're sorry that this one happened. There was a mess up on our part, on their part, on his part, on that part. This is what happened. This is the track record of it. We're sorry that it happened. We take full responsibility for it as the overall administration responsible, developer responsible. But this is what we are doing to make sure that it never happened. And if you look at what we're doing at the airport, if you look at what we're doing here, these are the mitigating factors that we already have in place to make sure stuff like this and others never happen. I think the Dominican people deserve that reassurance.
Well, Delbert, can I interject in just 1 minute? And I'm interjecting again as the businessman. You have to understand that when something happens under somebody's portfolio, and since it's the same person doing it, we would hope that that person would come forward and explain to us, like you mentioned. However, you also have to take responsibility for it, because what you're saying basically, if this happened under the watch of that person, we need to make sure that we pay attention to what is going on anything else that they're doing. Because if that person is not paying attention on project A, chances are they're not paying attention on project B. And I'll allow you to go on to your CBI program project.
But that's the natural that's the natural assumption. And I'm saying the powers that be and the people, the stakeholders involved, have the responsibility now to come and say that that's not the case, because the natural assumption is that, hey, if you're not paying attention here, we worried about the amount of attention that you're paying over here. So come out, people, and take responsibility and say, hey, no, this is not our standard operating procedure. This is not how we behave. This is not our general modus operandi. And this is what we're doing to ensure public safety. All right. Let's talk about CBI for a little bit, Mr. G. I know our time is quickly running out, but we can spend some time on it, right? There are lots of things to talk about the CBI. And one of the things that's very strange is that people, anytime you talk about the CBI, people start to get nervous, as if everybody wants to take down the CBI. That's not true, right? Because here's the thing, accountability means transparency. If you're accountable for something, it means that there's a certain level of transparency that you have attached to the way that you interface with it and that you interact with it, right? And obviously, time is short in the parliament during the presentation, so I made one little observation. And here's the thing. Again, it goes to the whole issue of public perception, public support, and public buy-in, right? One of the things we have to understand is that if people continue to notice a certain level of inconsistency in the things that we're reporting, it will automatically lead to them having certain questions and making assumptions, obviously out of the lack of information. You can't stop people from doing that, particularly when you're dealing with government-led institutions and government-led data. You cannot stop people from making assumptions if you don't provide enough information. One of the areas this year is looking at the revenue that we're getting from the CBI. I mean, it's in the estimates. The estimates are available online now. Anybody can go and look at it. Now, one of the things that I went through in the presentation in the parliament is that the certificate of naturalization, which they refer to as the CON, right, is where everybody that got a certificate of naturalization has to pay a fee. So regardless of if you're a family of 6 or a family of 10, and you paid a particular package price, which is often lower demand, etc., each of your family members who will be issued a passport, all right, because they have now been given citizenship, or we have now exchanged citizenship, they individually have to get a certificate of naturalization, right? Now, because the price for the certificate of naturalization is fixed, you can use it to determine how many people or how many certificates were actually issued, and you get a particular number over a particular period, right? Now, when we looked in the estimates, and we saw the reporting, you can actually look at the projection. So what we did was use 2023, 2024, and you look at the projections there, what the amount of money that we projected to receive versus now we have the value of what we actually received, right? And when you do those, you can say, okay, this is the difference. What happened and what I was trying to present, and hopefully giving the government an opportunity to correct it and to address it, was say, hey, there is an inconsistency happening here. Because in 2023, 2024, we projected that we would receive $6.9 million in revenue from the certificate of naturalization, right? If you divide that at the time by the fee that everybody had to pay, which was $670, $250 US at the time, you would end up with a little over 10,000 citizens, right? Now, when we fast forward to these actual figures, we're saying the actual that we received was $4.2 million, right? The trade-off of that basically is 3,990 citizens less. Good? What that should show is that if we have less citizens, the revenue that we received, which is people trying to say that I said it was directly proportional. It's not directly proportional. It's not to say that every person paid the same price. That's not true. But we're saying if the amount of citizens drop, we don't expect the revenue to be going up. Somebody even remarked that, maybe they were using the package prices and that reinforces the point. It means that if you're using a package price and you're giving families of 6 and families of 10 less, you're giving them a package price, it reinforces the point that you would be getting less money because they're paying less individually, right? So how is it that we got in 2023, 2024, we're saying the revenue that we should have received from the CBI was 617 million. In 2023, the actual, we're saying we actually received $622 million, $5 million more than we projected when we had close to 4,000 citizens less. That is an inconsistency. And I'm saying the difficulty we're having with those types of things is that when these inconsistencies persist, the questions and the assumptions will keep persisting. And that is what brings compromise to the public perception of our CBI program that we would all love to protect. And I think that the government has a responsibility to come out and say, hey, this was an anomaly, this was an inconsistencies, and this is why. We can do the math all day and see the inconsistencies, but I think it is the responsibility of the administration to come out and say, hey, there's nothing untoward happening here. This is what happened. This is what happened. This was a mistake, or here is the actual breakdown, and this is why we got to these numbers. Because unless you do that, you cannot stop people from having questions that, hey, probably something is wrong here. Probably something is wrong here because the math not mathing.
Well, Delbert, it's not that the math is not mathing. We, as professionals, if you run a business, your math is supposed to be very accurate. And not only that, Delbert, one of the things I really want to bring to the people there and let them understand is that this was not an estimate or a projection that you were talking about. These were actual factual numbers that were put down on a paper that you were extrapolating and getting to the actual figure. So this was a 1 + 1 and you added it on a calculator and it should have equal to 2. However, it was $6 or $7 million over what was expected. So if you're getting that money over, and don't get me wrong, I have no problems in getting extra money because everybody loves extra money. Because, and this is something that people might knock you for, Delbert, that Delbert is complaining about us getting extra money. But when you deal with people's money, you have to have accountability and you have to be able to explain where that money came from. And there's no way that $6 million extra shows up in your bank account unless you have a fairy godmother. So what Delbert is asking, it would be good if the government explained to us who or where is our fairy godmother.
Point well taken. Lamb, you have a call?
Yes. Caller, please go ahead.
So we lost that call. All right, so maybe the caller will call back in a moment, and if the caller does call back, you'll just make us a signal, Lambi, and we'll take the call. Dr. Andre, the saying goes, well, it's being commonly said, these people have no respect for Dominicans' money. That is what is being said. And you can see in all the numbers that are coming out, grammar school and all that. And, incidentally, the government had said there was going to be an investigation into the grammar school project. I don't know whether there's been any report submitted so far.
Yeah, should I go ahead or do Lambi?
Let's take a call from Lambi first.
Caller, please go ahead.
Yes. How much money Skerrit is going to receive from the Arab countries for bringing Palestinians to Dominica? And how on earth can we celebrate Liberation Day when the black people in the Caribbean and especially in Dominica treating the people worse than when the white man was there? What kind of celebration is that? It is ridiculous, it's wickedness, and it's time that Skerrit goes out of office. Merci.
Well, Mr. G, if you mind, I'll take that one. If you don't mind, I'm going to step up to the plate, and really and truly, Mr. Skerritt brought that up to the table, and that was really the wrong place to bring it up. He should have known better. That suggestion should have never been brought up in Parliament. He brought up something which was saying, "Hey, maybe we should consider we use this," and really and truly. Really, Mr. Skerritt, this is a diversion tactic. I don't think we should ever approach this question on any serious level.
Let's take a call, Lambi.
Yes, caller, please go ahead. Caller, are you listening? Please go ahead.
Look like we lost that call. Right. Okay. So, Dr. Andre, let's go to
Yeah. Well, let me elaborate on a point made by
Lambi, you want to take a call?
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good night. Gentlemen, I'm listening to you all. And we all know that the government, I would say the government, are not the number one, where there is no checks and balances, you will get this kind of stuff, because what it just shows is that these are just numbers put in place so that we, the Dominican people, will accept it. That's just what happening. Your check and balances are not legitimate. Things are not done properly with the resources of the country. So what happened when it comes for budget time, numbers are just put in place to give us an idea where we have been fooled. And we need to say it for what it is. That is basically what's going on. The resources of the state is being played with. That's what's going on. The checks and balances are not legitimate. It's compromise. Have a blessed night. Thank you.
Have a blessed night yourself. You want to take another call, Lambi?
Yes. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes. Good night, gentlemen. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Yeah. Let me tell you, can somebody tell me what do you think of the president's speech especially when she was basing on the TBI program, TBI thing? The president, I guess you all heard her speech. I don't really hear all your views about her speech. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot. I suspect Dr. Andre might comment on that.
But you might have another call.
Let's take another call.
His hand is up.
Caller, please go ahead. On the overseas line, please go ahead.
Looks like the caller was not paying attention, or the line is not functioning properly. Dr. Andre?
Okay. Yeah, a couple of things. One of the panelists made reference to the investigation that was promised but hasn't taken place. Now, bear in mind one thing. We're talking about the investigation of what can only be described as a catastrophic collapse of a building under construction, where hundreds of Dominican students would attend daily to the load, obviously. Now, bear in mind what we started when we started tonight's discussion. The Minister of Trade was calling for the Bureau of Standards to investigate why the cover of a water bottle, wasn't tight enough to his liking. He's calling for an investigation, you know. But the colossal collapse of the roof of a building under construction designed to house Dominican, not to house, but to a place, a space where Dominican students would attend and to get a secondary education. Thus far, despite protestations about an inquiry and returns on or results within 30 days, hasn't seen the light of day. It tells you about the priority that we have to deal with almost on a daily basis. It is almost a situation cynically. You want to investigate why a mouse ate the cheese. But when it comes to the colossal collapse of a structure built by cronies or by persons who allegedly were operating under a no-bid contract, there is silence. It is, well, there may well be a cover-up. It's simple as that. I think it was the ERC which proposed an independent investigation of this incident by experienced architects, engineers, and so on. Let me tell you one thing. It will never happen because this is not a truth-finding exercise. This is a cover-up exercise. And yes, can you imagine if that had happened after the school had opened? Can you imagine how many funerals there may well have been? But it doesn't warrant. Gabriel Christian, my friend, has complained perennially that there doesn't seem to be any appetite for any commission of inquiry into serious mishaps, misadventures, serious breakdown, so to speak, because the whole focus is cover up, cover up, cover up. That's where we live. We have created that monster, quite frankly. We have to take responsibility, my friends. Can't run away from that. As Bob Marley says, you can run away, but you can't run away from yourself. We can't. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. Looks like we've come to the end of our run this evening, and I just left to take your closing remarks. Let me go to you, Andy, for your final words.
Well, I think my final words are going to be I think we need to take business more seriously, and Dominica is a business. It would be very hard for us to progress if we continue along this trend. And we need to look at our peers and our country islands among us and see why they're leaving us behind and see why tourists are choosing to go to those other islands instead, or see why they're choosing to invest in those other islands. If we want to be an investable product, if we want to be an investable country, the things that we talked about on this program today and Delbert talked about, we need to start making sure that we look at them. We have to come up with accurate numbers, accurate figures, and we need people who are effective, not incompetent. And one of the things I think we have to, if we ever do any political reorganization or any, electoral reform, is making sure that we hold people accountable. One of the real good things in this country, the United States, I'll tell you, is that we make sure that people are accountable for whatever they do. Whatever the job they do, they have to be guaranteed. The time schedule that they give you must be kept. The amount of resources that they're about to use, where are your money, those things are valuable. We need to make sure that the people that are using or spending Dominica's money, those people are doing it with the sincerity of their heart and with the goodness of the country. And probably the last thing I'm going to ask on the list is that we need people with vision. I think Roosevelt Scarrett has lost vision. The things that he is coming up with are so ridiculous that I cannot understand how we are expected to progress as a country if those things are on the table. We need big visions, and I don't think Dominica lacks in terms of people who can bring those to the table, but a lot of those good ideas are being suppressed and trampled on by the people above. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Delbert, your closing remarks?
Very simple closing remarks. I think more conversations like these need to be had. I think we have a responsibility to ourselves. We have a responsibility to our children and to our young people that the whatever activities that we engaged in currently, it should result in a better, more profitable, more sustainable Dominica for them for the next 50 to 100 years. We have to leave them with something that is worth fighting for. As it stands, our young people don't have a lot of hope. They don't see Dominica being the place they can achieve the future that they want. And we need to work as hard as we can to change that ideology. Because if our young people don't stay, we won't have a Dominica in 50 years. That includes holding our government accountable. That includes our government doing the job that they are getting paid to do and doing the things that they say they're going to do. And it's going to take the effort of all of us to get that job done. But I have faith in the people of Dominica. I think we can get the job done. I think we can turn this thing around. And when the storybooks and the history books are written, we'll be able to tell a tale of when Dominica was not heading in the place where it should, and the catalyst that turned it around. And I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that solution.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. G, for your time.
Thanks a lot, Delbert. I'm very happy with your optimism, and I hope it all comes through. Dr. Andre, your closing final words?
Yes, we hope there will be a tale to be told, but it's a tale of strife and struggle, a tale of achievement, a tale of opportunities galore for those who are coming behind, a tale of freedom, a tale of respect for the Constitution, a tale of letting the prophet be recognized in his own country, a tale of reaping or opening or unleashing the potential of an independent people. Arundel Thomas years ago wrote a brilliant poem encapsulating that vision of an independent Dominica. It is hopefully a tale where we have recognized that to be a productive, Black, independent, productive people, charity must begin at home and nowhere else. And if we embrace such a vision, quite frankly, we will realize that the journey or the toil required for success is well within our reach. And we can move forth boldly without being, well, how should I put it, without being held down or down pressed by some type of complex that tells us that we have to get ahead by walking on our people as opposed to walking along with them on that road where hopefully our fortunes will be paved, if not in gold, but in precious metal. But the metal of which I speak is not the gold and the myrrh, but the metal of strength, moral strength, independent strength, strength of integrity, and strength of purpose. Hopefully we will have that precious stone within the bosoms of Dominicans. Thank you. Good night. Thank you, the panelists. You did an excellent job. Thank you, Mr. G. Lambie, thank you.
Thanks a whole lot, Dr. Andre. I noticed that you referred to Delbert as the prophet, but
looks like one.
We'll leave that open to speculation. Andy, thanks a lot. Delbert, thanks a lot, Irvin. Thank you so much for your contributions tonight, Lambie. You, Sherwin. Thanks a lot, everybody on Facebook and YouTube out there. Thanks a lot for sticking with us all this while. And we could not really acknowledge some of your contributions on Facebook, but you know that our heart is with you, and we have understood all of your comments that you made there. So it just left for me to say good night, everybody. Good night, Andy. Good night, Delbert.
Good night, folks.
Good night,
Take
Lam.
care. Thank you.
Everybody. Take care. Till next time.
Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from, understanding our past, embracing our present, charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty, embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global View on Q. Networking Dominica with the rest of the world. The expert